Let me say this loud and clear. The most dangerous woman in the room is the one who's already walked away in her mind. She's done explaining. She's done waiting. She's done sacrificing herself to make others feel comfortable. And the world doesn't just notice her, it can't ignore her. Detachment isn't about apathy. It's about power. When you learn to let go of outcomes, opinions, and outdated expectations, you free yourself. And that freedom, it's magnetic. Because the woman who doesn't need validation is the woman everyone wants to understand. But no one can control. Detachment is often misunderstood. People mistake it for emotional coldness, aloofness, or even arrogance. But detachment, when it comes from a place of inner strength, is none of those things. It is not about shutting down your emotions or pretending you don't care. It is about choosing where your energy goes, and more importantly, where it doesn't. Detachment is about owning your emotions instead of letting them own you. It's not a wall. It's a boundary. And it is built with intention. A woman who learns detachment doesn't stop feeling. She stops leaking. She stops pouring herself into situations that drain her. She stops reacting to everything that tries to pull her off center. She doesn't spin her wheels, trying to convince people of her worth. She doesn't argue with those who misunderstand her or chase after those who underestimate her. She simply disengages, not because she's weak, but because she's mastered the discipline of protecting her peace. When you detach from needing approval, everything shifts. The constant need to be understood fades. The habit of over-explaining dies. You begin to realize that not every conversation deserves your voice. Not every situation requires your energy. Not every opportunity is meant for you. And that's okay. You stop clinging. You stop negotiating your standards. You stop compromising your truth to make someone else feel more comfortable. Detachment gives you clarity. It sharpens your focus. This is where real self-respect begins. Because detachment doesn't mean walking away from love, from relationships, or from people. It means walking away from patterns that keep you small. It means walking away from environments that confuse chaos for passion. It means standing so firmly in who you are that you no longer let someone else's indecision shake your foundation. It means no longer confusing being needed with being valued. Detachment gives you presence. You stop living in fear of what might go wrong or obsessing over how to hold things together. You show up fully, but without gripping. You learn to love with depth, but not dependency. You learn to give without depletion. You become rooted in your self-worth. So when things leave, fall apart, or shift, you remain intact. Because your identity is no longer tied to anything outside of you. It is in detachment that you begin to heal the parts of you that once begged for connection at any cost. The part that felt unseen and overperformed to be chosen. The part that accepted crumbs in the name of loyalty. The part that stayed too long, waited too quietly, or gave too much. Detachment is what tells those parts, you don't need to earn your worth. You already have it, and you're allowed to walk away without guilt. You become a woman of stillness. Stillness that cannot be manipulated. Stillness that listens more than it reacts. Stillness that intimidates, not because it is aggressive, but because it is unshakable. And in a world that rewards constant noise, this kind of stillness is rare. It is valuable. It is powerful. And it cannot be faked. You earn it by learning not to attach your identity to outcomes, people, or roles that are temporary. Detachment teaches you patience. When you're no longer frantically trying to force things to happen, you learn to allow. You learn to observe. You begin to trust yourself more, because your decisions aren't driven by fear or lack. You know what you bring to the table, and you're not afraid to eat alone. You stop settling because silence is no longer scary. It's sacred. You stop grasping because being alone no longer means being lonely. You learn how to stay open without being wide open. You create room for people to show up, not because you need them to, but because you welcome authenticity. You no longer attach to potential. You stop falling for projections. You only hold space for what is real, what is mutual, and what honors your standards. Detachment makes you discerning. It teaches you to see clearly, without being clouded by desperation or illusion. In the end, detachment doesn't make you harder. It makes you stronger. Not because you've numbed yourself, but because you've trained yourself. You've learned to pause before you react, to breathe before you decide, to walk away without making a scene. And most importantly, you've learned to choose yourself in every room, every conversation, every decision, not as an afterthought, but as the default. You don't chase, you choose. That shift is everything. Chasing comes from a place of lack, of fear, of not being enough. It's a response rooted in insecurity, where your worth becomes dependent on how someone else receives you. But when you choose, it comes from power, from clarity, from knowing that your value is not up for negotiation. You begin to realize you are the one in control, not the one waiting to be noticed, picked, or approved of. That's when you stop hustling for your place in people's lives and start deciding who gets a place in yours. When you chase, you abandon yourself. You silence your intuition. You override the little voice that says, "This doesn't feel right," because you're too focused on being accepted. You give over, explain, and overextend, hoping it'll make you worthy. But the truth is, every time you chase, you're training yourself to settle. You're teaching your nervous system that survival means pleasing, that love means effort without reciprocation, that being enough requires proving. And none of that is sustainable. Choosing, on the other hand, requires presence. It asks you to slow down, to observe instead of react. It's no longer about being liked. It's about being aligned. You start to ask better questions. Does this serve my peace? Does this align with my values? Does this person, this job, this space support who I'm becoming? You choose what nurtures you, not what merely entertains or distracts you. That's not selfish. That's self-respect. And once you begin choosing, the game changes. This shift also changes how you experience connection. You stop performing. You stop trying to mold yourself into what others want. You stop walking on eggshells in relationships just to keep the peace. You don't twist yourself to fit in anymore. You honor your shape, your pace, your truth. You show up whole, and that alone becomes a filter. Anything that's real will meet you there. Anything that's not will fade away. And you'll let it without resistance. Choosing is grounded. It doesn't rush. It doesn't attach to fantasy. It doesn't get swept up in the potential of who someone could be. It sees clearly. It listens closely. It understands that a connection is only as strong as its foundation, and no amount of chasing can build what isn't solid. You start to value stability over sparks, respect over attention, consistency over intensity. You choose people who choose you back, not just with words, but with actions. When you choose, your standards stop feeling like walls and start feeling like protection. You know the difference between preference and principle. You're no longer available for people who want access to your energy without honoring your effort. You're no longer available for conversations that drain you, spaces that shrink you, or roles that exhaust you. You're done begging to be seen. You're done hoping someone will treat you right. You're too focused on making sure you are treating yourself right. There's a deep confidence that comes with choosing. It's quiet, not loud. It doesn't scream for attention. It simply operates with certainty. You know your worth, and you're not in a rush to prove it. You're okay with silence. You're okay with solitude. You're okay with passing on something that doesn't sit right, even if it once looked like everything you wanted. Because choosing teaches you discernment. And with discernment, you lose interest in things that once captivated you. You also stop fearing rejection. Because when you choose, you're not placing your identity in someone else's hands. Rejection becomes redirection. Ghosting becomes closure. Silence becomes clarity. You don't need closure when you're clear on your value. You don't spiral when things fall apart. You evaluate. You ask, was I chasing something that wasn't mine to begin with? And more often than not, the answer is yes. Choosing lets you release what's not yours with grace. This mindset redefines what success and love look like. Success becomes less about chasing accolades and more about choosing work that fulfills you. Love becomes less about finding someone and more about building something real with someone who's ready. You start to realize that nothing good ever comes from desperation. Everything grounded, lasting, and true begins with choice. Intentional, clear, and self-honoring choice. And as you grow in this energy, people notice. You no longer move with urgency. You move with certainty. You're not afraid to wait, not afraid to walk, not afraid to say no. You are not auditioning for roles in anyone's life. You are not performing for love or attention. You are rooted. And from that place, you build everything. Not from chasing what glitters, but from choosing what's gold. Boundaries are not about keeping people out. They're about keeping yourself intact. They are not rules made from resentment. They are guidelines formed from self-respect. A woman who knows her worth understands that she doesn't owe everyone access. Not to her time, not to her energy, and certainly not to her emotional space. Boundaries are not a punishment, they are a filter. They protect your peace, guard your progress, and preserve the energy you need to keep building the life you deserve. Too many women are taught to be agreeable, to avoid being too much, too direct, or too distant, and in trying to be liked, they start to betray themselves. Saying yes when they want to say no, staying when they want to walk away, tolerating what should have never made it past the first interaction. But boundaries shift that. Boundaries remind you that you are not here to be palatable. You are here to be true. You are not responsible for other people's comfort with your truth. Only your own alignment with it. A lack of boundaries teaches people that you are always available, always forgiving, always giving even when you are empty. It trains others to see your compassion as a weakness, your patience as an invitation to be mistreated. But when you start to set boundaries, you begin to retrain the world and yourself. You learn that saying, "No doesn't make you unkind. It makes you honest." You learn that distance can be a form of clarity. That silence can be protection. That cutting access is not cruelty. It's survival. Boundaries bring you back to yourself. When you say, "This is what I allow, and this is what I do not," you reclaim authority over your life. You stop letting guilt write your story. You stop letting fear guide your decisions. You stop needing everyone to understand. Because boundaries are not about making others feel good. They're about staying rooted in what makes you feel whole. And the more you practice them, the easier it becomes to recognize when something is crossing a line. They also change the way you love. You no longer equate love with sacrifice. You no longer stretch yourself to hold relationships that are breaking you. You love, but you don't lose yourself in the process. You give, but not at the expense of your emotional well-being. You show up, but only when showing up doesn't mean shrinking. Boundaries don't make your love weaker. They make it real, because love without boundaries is chaos. It's obligation, not connection. Setting boundaries is not just about other people. It's about you. About keeping promises to yourself. About standing on your standards, even when it's uncomfortable. About listening to that inner voice that says, "This doesn't feel right," and honoring it before the damage is done. Boundaries are your way of saying, "I matter enough to protect my space." And when you move like you matter, everything around you begins to shift. You begin to realize that some people were only comfortable with the version of you that had no boundaries. The one who tolerated everything, stayed quiet, gave without asking for anything in return. And when you change, they push back. They question, manipulate, guilt, or disappear. That's not your problem. That's your confirmation. The ones who respect your boundaries respect you. The ones who resist them never valued you beyond what they could take. Boundaries also show up in your goals. You stop allowing distractions. You stop explaining your ambition. You stop watering yourself down to make your dreams less intimidating. You say, "This is what I'm building, and I'm not available for anything that threatens it." You create space for growth, and anything that can't grow with you falls away naturally. Boundaries don't limit you. They elevate you. They keep you focused, disciplined, and driven. You start holding yourself accountable too. You set emotional boundaries with your own patterns. You stop letting fear run the show. You stop giving anxiety permission to decide. You don't let trauma rewrite your present. You catch yourself when you start pleasing, overworking, or self-abandoning. You don't just ask others to respect you. You lead by example. You become the guardian of your own energy, even when no one's watching. There is nothing more powerful than a woman who sets boundaries without apology. Who chooses herself over approval? Who enforces her limits with quiet certainty? She doesn't yell. She doesn't beg. She doesn't chase. She simply walks in the energy of someone who knows what she deserves and will not allow anything less. Calm confidence isn't loud, but it's impossible to ignore. It doesn't seek permission to exist, and it never begs for attention. It just is. A woman who carries herself with calm confidence enters a room without needing to announce herself, because her energy does it for her. It's the grounded posture, the quiet focus, the unbothered presence that draws people in. She doesn't need to prove anything, because she's already convinced of who she is, even if no one else is. She's not trying to impress anyone. She's not scanning the room for approval. She's fully at home in her own skin, and that alone makes her magnetic. You can feel it in the way she speaks. Measured, clear, never rushed. She's not performing. She's not trying to fit in. She knows she belongs, and that certainty makes space for others to adjust. She doesn't dominate the space, but she doesn't shrink from it either. She simply takes up her rightful place in it. What makes calm confidence so powerful is that it comes from within. It isn't based on titles, looks, money, or external validation. It's not about pretending to be fearless. It's about owning your fears without letting them dictate your behavior. It's about understanding your value so thoroughly that you don't need to defend it. The woman who walks in calm confidence has likely been through storms. But she's learned that reacting wildly doesn't make you strong. Responding wisely does. She doesn't talk over people. She listens closely, not to reply, but to understand. She doesn't try to be the smartest or most dominant person in the room. She simply knows that her intelligence, her insight, and her instincts are enough. She doesn't posture. She doesn't perform. She doesn't exhaust herself trying to be seen, because she's already seen by the one who matters most, herself. That kind of self-acknowledgement doesn't need applause to feel real. Calm confidence shows up in conflict too. When others escalate, she de-escalates. When people push her, she doesn't break. She holds her ground. She doesn't let chaos pull her off center. She doesn't let disrespect drag her down into emotional warfare. She knows the power of pausing, of taking a breath, of saying, "Not everything requires my reaction." And because she stays calm, she stays in control, not of others, but of herself. And that is the ultimate strength. It's also the kind of confidence that can't be faked. people can sense the difference between true inner calm and surface level confidence. They can feel when someone is at ease with themselves versus someone who is performing calmness for the sake of appearance. Real calm confidence is rooted in self-trust. It says, no matter what happens, I know I can handle it. That kind of trust doesn't shout, it doesn't flinch, and it doesn't chase validation. It simply operates from truth. You see it in the way she sets boundaries. Not with threats, but with clarity. She doesn't make a scene. She doesn't explain herself into exhaustion. She just says no and means it. Or she walks away without drama. Not because she's passive, but because her peace costs too much to sacrifice. She understands that calm doesn't mean passive. It means powerful without being performative. It's strength without noise. It's discipline wrapped in elegance. This energy intimidates people who rely on chaos. People who are used to controlling others with guilt, noise, or emotional volatility don't know how to handle a woman who won't react the way they expect. She doesn't yell back. She doesn't plead. She doesn't play games. She just doesn't engage on that level. And that can shake people, because they realize they can't control her. Not with emotion. Not with silence. Not with pressure. She holds her power in stillness. It's also why she doesn't rush. She's not in a race to prove anything. She trusts timing. She trusts her pace. She understands that being calm in the face of urgency is a skill and a choice. She doesn't let other people's panic become hers. She doesn't make decisions from fear. She sits with it. She waits. She assesses. She knows that in moments of stillness, she finds the clearest answers. And she respects herself enough to take that space. In a world that teaches women to be either quiet or loud, aggressive or accommodating, calm confidence carves out a new path. It blends grace with grit, softness with strength, quiet with certainty. And while others are busy trying to be heard, she's busy making sure she's aligned. She doesn't rush to speak. She doesn't rush to move. But when she does, every word lands. And every step matters. Because it comes from a place that no one else can shake. You are the prize. Not because someone said so, but because you know so. That truth isn't about arrogance or entitlement, it's about recognition. Recognizing your value, your effort, your growth, your energy, and what it actually costs for someone to be in your presence. It means you stop placing yourself on clearance just to be picked. It means you stop offering the most sacred parts of yourself to people who haven't earned the right to receive them. You no longer wait to be chosen. You walk in already chosen by you. Being the prize isn't about waiting to be pedestalized. It's about no longer shrinking to fit into spaces too small for you. It's about owning the way you love, the way you work, the way you think, and understanding that not everyone deserves a seat at your table. And that's not bitterness. That's discernment. You've spent years becoming who you are. Through struggle. Through healing. Through countless silent battles that no one saw. And if someone can't match the energy you bring, they don't get access. Simple. You stop auditioning for love, friendship, jobs, or validation. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop proving your worth through exhaustion. You stop handing out second chances, like free samples. You become selective, not out of fear, but from clarity. You know what you bring. You know your depth. And you understand that being available to everyone eventually costs you your peace. Being the prize means you vet before you invest. You evaluate before you engage. You observe before you attach. The shift happens when you stop asking, "Am I good enough for them?" and start asking, "Are they good enough for me?" That question changes everything. It brings your power back to you. Because when you operate from the belief that you are the prize, you are no longer desperate for attention. You are focused on alignment. It's not about being desired, it's about being respected. It's not about being needed, it's about being valued. That belief affects how you carry yourself. You walk differently, speak differently, make decisions with more intention. You don't chase chaotic energy. You don't tolerate hot and cold behavior. You don't lose sleep over people who treat you like an option. You walk away when something doesn't feel right, not because you're cold, but because you refuse to stay where love is conditional. You are no longer interested in proving your worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You learn to hold space for what reflects your standard. You become immune to shallow compliments and false promises. You're not swayed by pretty words without matching effort. Your time becomes sacred. Your presence becomes earned. You don't flinch when you're alone because solitude no longer feels like punishment. It feels like luxury. You're okay with being by yourself because you'd rather protect your peace than settle for crumbs dressed up as connection. Being the prize doesn't mean you're perfect. It means you own your flaws without letting them define your value. You've made mistakes. You've trusted the wrong people. You've ignored your intuition. And yet, here you are. Wiser, stronger, sharper. That's what makes you valuable. The growth. The grace. The way you keep rebuilding without losing your softness. The way you've learned to protect your heart without hardening it. You begin to surround yourself with people who recognize your worth without you having to hand them a blueprint. You stop shrinking for comfort. You stop dimming your light to make others feel more secure. You let your full self show up. Ambitious, compassionate, bold, discerning. You understand that the right people are not intimidated by your presence. They are inspired by it. And the wrong ones. You're fine letting them walk. It changes how you love. You love from fullness, not desperation. You don't seek someone to complete you. You seek someone to complement your already whole self. You love with intention, not dependency. You love with generosity, not sacrifice. And if it's not reciprocated, you don't cling. You release. Because you're not afraid to lose people who are afraid of your standards. You'd rather have empty space than energy that drains you. The real shift is internal. It's the moment you decide you're not settling anymore. That your worth is non-negotiable. That your peace is priceless. That your presence is powerful. And from that place, you stop asking for a seat at the table. You build your own, not out of spite, not to prove a point, but because you finally understand that you were never meant to beg for something you were born to embody.